Good evening and welcome to the meeting of the Reading Council for June 15th, 2021. Please join me in a prayer and our pledge. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May we have the council member roll call, please?
Mr. Powell?
Here.
Mr. Gertz?
Here.
Mr. Lynn?
Here.
Mr. Albright?
Here.
Mr. Lindeman?
Here.
Mr. Fish Asher?
Here.
Mrs. Edichico?
Here.
For those who haven't seen the agenda online, starting with the first meeting back at our council chambers, there will be a 7 to 7:30 pre-meeting question and answer period, non-recorded session with the Reading administration. And it'll be held each meeting in the council chambers once we start back into the council chambers. Unless there's any objection, the minutes for the council meeting on June 1st, 2021 are approved as distributed. Those minutes are approved. We have an audience participation. I do not see Mr. Orman online. He may come late. I think he was supposed to be a participant, but I don't know if that was completed. Keith, can you tell me if he completed a registration?
I do not get those. I apologize. I'm not sure.
Okay. All right. Well, I sent him how to do it, but that doesn't mean he did it. So there is a letter from Mr. Likens for a reading of, we'll go to a reading of communications. So if you can read that.
First, I'd like to make a motion, Chris,
Okay.
to add a second letter from Linda Wilson to the agenda to be read.
Okay, it'll go under the reading of communications also.
Thank you.
All in favor of that addition to the communications and say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Then we'll read that one also, Carla.
All right. Okay, the first communication is from Don Likens. He writes, Chief Edens, wanted to drop you a note to say how pleased I have been with Lieutenant Latire for his work on my stolen electricity by criminal and former employee Gary Reed, case C21 CRB 4987. Officer Luttrell was extremely polite from the beginning and eager to work with me when taking the initial report, then followed up with an affidavit. I witnessed how well he worked with the prosecutor also, as well as we all went to court on 6/1. He clearly wants to stamp our crime in Reading, and I greatly appreciate this. Case went to trial Tuesday, 6/1, and Gary Reed pled guilty to a lesser crime of unlawful use of property. Regardless, thanks to your great officer, Lieutenant Latire, for staying on it, being so kind and professional. Please ensure all officers model Lieutenant Latire's attitude and perseverance. With folks like Lieutenant Latire on staff, thieves don't stand a chance in Reading. Don Likens.
Thank you, Carla. And then the one from Miss Martin.
Let me just pull that up just a second. I got
Wilson, Miss Wilson.
it. Okay. All right. again from Ms. Linda Wilson. To the mayor and city council. I understand that in one of the recent meetings, it was stated that all the houses on Thornridge were canvassed regarding the Thornridge Drive project. On what dates did that take place? I work from home every day and am at home in the evenings. At no time has anyone come to my house regarding this project. In the rare few minutes where I may have taken a walk, no literature was left on my door to indicate that any City of Reading official stopped at my residence. In speaking with neighbors, I understand that no one from the city stopped at their houses either. The cutting of all our trees will leave this neighborhood looking like a tired old street with no relief from sun or wind. Every house, yard that is not in good repair will now be on full display to every motorist and neighbor. We residents will be forced to keep our blinds, curtains closed all day, making our houses dark. It will increase utility bills with the sun beating down on our houses for a good portion of the day. It takes away the privacy from the front of our homes. The noise from the HVAC system at the new school will no longer have a buffer. Yes, we can hear that AC system inside our houses, as well as the early morning dumpster pickups. The air quality will be lowered with no trees to clean the air and produce oxygen. Hamilton County already received a failing grade for air quality. This project will certainly add to the failing grade. Residents will no longer have any shade if they want to continue walking. Did anyone consider the sun blindness that will occur trying to drive south up the hill on Thornridge to Furman when the slant of the sun during the winter will hit motorists in the face? It will have the same effect as driving west on Furman to the stop sign at Thornridge in the late afternoon. Sycamore Township is able to replace sewers and repave roads in Dillonvale without the trees being removed. Those streets allow parking on one side of the street, and some of them are just as busy as Thornridge. I lived in that area for over 20 years. After the broken promises from the school, the building of baseball fields instead of a community building, which could be used by all residents, and now the cutting of our trees on Thornridge, I can only surmise that the city of Reading does not really care about what their residents want. Yes, I realize I am only one resident with a vote, but my next vote will be for candidates who truly have the best interests of the residents of Reading in mind and listen to what the residents want. Unfortunately, that election will be too late to save Thornridge. Respectfully submitted, Linda Wilson.
I'll make a motion to receive and file it.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Gertz, second by Ms. Chico to mark the communication received and filed. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Any comments from anyone?
If the chief wasn't copied on that correspondence for the officer, I think that he should get a copy.
The chief wasn't?
I asked
He-
if
he was. No, he
Oh, I
was.
thought so.
Just my comment on it, we're going to be doing more than just repaving the street and replacing the sewer. The street's also being widened and the sidewalks are being replaced. So basically on either side of the trees, we've been told that the trees are doomed, even if, by the work that's being done, the trees would be doomed and have to come down anyways. So that was something I'd like to say about it.
Okay,
And
thank you.
I did meet with Linda over the weekend and kind of walked around some of the area. A lot of the issues have to do with property maintenance. So I did forward that on to Patrick, and hopefully the building department can get up there and look at some of those properties. Regarding the issues with the school, I did talk to them, and the fences along that backs up to the yards along Thornridge is supposed to be installed. I think Colette said the end of July, beginning of August. So that is going up, and hopefully that will help with the noise. The school did meet with residents in the area, and the ones that they didn't meet with said that they'd rather have fencing than trees along it because they felt the fencing would would help with the noise better than the trees. And they're also putting she called it a blanket on the HVAC system up there to help reduce the noise with that as well. So I know that's happening. It is heartbreaking to see a lot of the older trees cut down. I do agree with her there. But I again understand that this project needs to be done. That street is very narrow. And there's other issues with parking that will need to be looked at after the street project's done. People parking in the curb and not moving during snow emergencies. She was explaining to me. She pointed out some signs where there's snow emergency signs that people continue to park there. And so that we'll have to kind of keep an eye on as the project goes on. And then, even when we put in the street humps, I think some of the parking signs and that might have to be changed. But I'd also, once that's done, would like to look into something. I know I talked to her about it, like Tree City USA, I believe the Arbor Day Foundation, things like that for residents that would like to have trees in front of their homes. I know some didn't, some were happy to see them go. But, for the ones that would like one there, we can maybe look into something like that after the project's finished.
Very good. Thank you for doing that.
I thought we were going to have more like some public hearings on it, but that never came to fruition. So it is what it is at this point in time. And I think the Tree USA thing created some of the problem up there because they put too many trees in to begin with.
All right, thank you for that and for reading those communications. I'd like to go to the guest speaker, City of Reading Safety Service Director, Mr. Patrick Ross. You're on mute, Mr. Patrick.
Thank you, Chris. First and foremost, I work directly for the mayor, and he has never compelled me to attend meetings because of how I've been treated at these meetings. I've been disrespected either directly or indirectly at council meetings. At one of the last meetings I attended, I was trying to give an input on a matter. I was interrupted and told, "I don't care what your opinion is." This behavior is unacceptable, uncalled for, and frankly below the City of Reading Council, and I do not deserve to be treated or spoke to in this manner. This was not the first time I have been treated this way at a public meeting. On more than one occasion, I've been told to shut up, be quiet, and reminded that I was not a council member and was a guest at the meeting. Is this how we treat our guests? The most prominent feeling I have about council meetings is embarrassed. I'm embarrassed for our city that this is how our meetings are, because it reflects poorly on our city. Our meetings should be professional, and unfortunately, they have not always been. I have had several people, many of them residents, but also other communities, elected officials, outside businesses, professionals, and organizations say to me, "Wow," when they have seen our meetings over the last several years. I have not attended the meetings regularly because they are unproductive and unprofessional and do not help me to do my job as the person responsible for managing the city on a day-to-day basis, for which I am very proud. Local government's primary responsibility is for public safety and services. My top administrative responsibility is to maintain a high-quality police department, fire EMS department, and public works department. And for that, I couldn't be prouder. We have expanded what our departments do, including for police services, we contract with Arlington Heights and have become the primary paramedic EMS services for the entire community in Amberley Village. These contracts have bolstered our departments and made the service our residents receive better. We have one of the most skilled and versatile public works departments who can fix water main breaks, repair roads, and make sure our streets are safe year-round, especially when we have inclement weather. We have asked all our office employees to do more through tight budgetary constraints, and I also gladly assist in a wide variety of areas. I would put our employees up against any city for the quality of service they provide every day. Am I perfect? Do I know it all? Absolutely not. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. When I fail or fall short or make a mistake or see a place where I or we as a city can do better, I strive to do so myself or to help make it happen. I take an immense amount of pride in the city of Reading, its history, and the work I do. My family's history in this community goes back well over 100 years with the veteran family. My great-grandfather held the same job I have long before I was alive. And his daughter, my grandmother, has lived here her entire nearly 100 years of life. My late grandfather, who I strive to emulate, volunteered for many positions both in the city and at his church. And my mother cares as much for the city of Reading as anyone I know. There is no job I have held or been a member of a team that I did not give my all to help that organization or team succeed. From youth sports, to graduating high school with honors and earning a scholarship, to being part of a professional sports team at the highest level, to being the city clerk, the safety service director, and most importantly, as a father to my daughter. I have always given my all and did my best to be successful. Again, I do not think that I have all the answers or know it all, and sometimes I do fall short. But I do not let that deter me, because sometimes life's greatest successes are the result of failure. I do not mind criticism either. Where I do have a problem is where my character and the quality of work impugned unjustly. I'm not going to do a point-by-point rebuttal of untrue things said about me, but going forward, I would appreciate questions from members via email so there is a clear record of what was sent and what was responded. I did not truly want to make this statement publicly and have hesitated to defend myself because I personally do not enjoy conflict. I did so because I have been publicly attacked, and I wanted to explain to all council members and all residents why I have not attended the meetings regularly, and to assure all that I am working hard every day for the city. Reading is an excellent community to live, work, and do business in. We are a growing community where people want to live, want to work, and want to do business in. In the last 10 years, we have seen tremendous growth from our businesses in our city. That has allowed us to continue to provide a high level of service our residents deserve. I remain incredibly excited about Reading's future, where we are headed, and I'm proud of the small role that I have played. As a reminder, please send questions via email. And as Chris noted, myself or the mayor will be at council chambers at 7 p.m. before meetings to answer any questions anyone has. Thank you. Thank you, Chris, for giving me that opportunity.
Yeah, I'd like to respond quickly to you, Mr. Ross. I have made many attempts to try to contact you by phone, email. Mayor told us you're available 24/7. I don't really get any responses. We were going to meet. We did after I finally sent a letter to council. I am concerned about the things, just a few things that I put down, the 12 things. You are the chief executive appointee of the mayor, and I do believe that if the chips fall where they may, they fall where they may. I mean, you said you played professional football. You ought to be able to take a certain amount of criticism, or if it's there. Or I don't think I ever told you to shut up. I think the only time I ever remember is when you interrupted Mr. Ashbrook, and he was a councilman talking to a member of the school board at an open council meeting. He was a councilman. He does have priority to talk. I am frustrated with some of the things that have gone on with the manner and how you conduct your job. I'm very apprehensive about the community development block grant money that has to be spent by August. I don't know of any project yet. I haven't seen it. I had put an ordinance on the floor to try and determine whether or not we got a timetable on putting the wires underground. I'm concerned about the attractive nuisance up at PNC property. I'm concerned about many things that I've submitted in a letter that I sent. And I still you sent some responses, but I then responded to those and wanted to meet with you privately to go over those and see if I could explore the solutions. But unfortunately, that never happened. I guess I don't see him on the screen anymore, so maybe he's not here. Maybe I don't know that. And I've served in that capacity as the safety service director many years ago, and I had received many more criticisms and questions and comments. You have to step up and be able to respond to them. If you don't have an answer, then you go get an answer and bring it back. You're not the first or the last that ever had to deal with those issues. I think it's ironic that you talk about your history, which is wonderful. And I think the world many of your relatives, Phil Petronio and Lois and Jane, even Harry Veteran. He was appointed by my father when he was mayor back in 1941, 42. So I know all of that history. I'm very familiar with it. It's a matter of this kind of thing goes with the territory of the job. You have to be able to step up to it. If you played professional football, which you did, I'm sure you were criticized by your coaches that things weren't going in the right direction. And they thought you should do something differently or better. When I was criticized, I was told I wasn't smart enough to handle anything one time by a particular councilman. And they created a separate utility commission, took that out of my hand. Ironically, they stuck it with your grandfather, which was unfair, Phil Petronio. Took me off the hook. I kind of liked it, to be honest with you, at the time. I know when Denny was my safety service director, we attended every council meeting. We had an opposition council of that we had to work with and coax and to negotiate to get the Benson Streetscape project completed in 1983. And that was $1.5 million project. We had to sway one other Democrat councilman to come over with the 3 Republicans at that time. And people don't realize there's a major storm sewer, 5-foot in diameter storm sewer we put under Benson Street to eliminate flooding. I've lived in this, I've never gotten off the block in this neighborhood. I know the flooding. In 1974, I worked to develop the Truman Young study, and many of those have been completed. I'm very aggressive about having flood remediation down in Ward 2, and it still needs to be done. There are times when things didn't get accomplished. I didn't want to bring it up, but since you're bringing up the issue, we had to have a special council meeting in May, and Sabrina Smith had to go around to get bills paid because we had a temporary appropriation. It went through April. After doing my investigation, I found out we had our budget certified on September the 8th of 2020, almost 6-7 months prior. And I don't know how many times, I'm not going to ask Carl to look into the record. I don't know how many times I asked if we ever had our certification of the budget from the Budget Commission. We didn't even need a temporary appropriation. So it is frustrating when someone looks into the details and finds that there's things that were not accomplished that should have been done sooner than later. And I'm going to have a report tonight in my Finance Committee report. I did have a meeting today. I'm going to go into it at this point in time. But if you're concerned about things that I raise issues, all I can tell you is I'm doing it because I'm an elected city official, and I believe that I have a duty to my people in my community. I don't know that the things I've written, they stand as they're written. If you take them as a criticism, I'm sorry you take them that way, but they need to be answered. Those are just a couple of the issues I'm concerned about. I'm concerned about the fact that we have somehow, without breaching any confidence, but we need to investigate what has occurred in the police department in the last 3 or 4 years. You just had mentioned, we do have great employees. I'm not criticizing any of our employees. I helped build some of those particular agencies and so forth. Certainly the service department, I go back many years in developing and helping the service to build the service department. We never used to paint our own streets. We used to contract it out. We never used to do our own water main work. We contracted out. When I was service director, I went and made sure all of those things were explored by the quality people we had. And so I'm fully aware of the wonderful employees we have, work to develop that, but this whole problem with an employee lawsuit in the safety department, that needs to be investigated and explored. You're the chief officer that was in power at the time when this thing unfolded. I'd like to know what happened. We're going to get burnt, and that's the way it's going to shake down. So I regret if you're addressing that to me. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're addressing it to probably Randy Fishesser and Danny and Lind and so forth, and Don Lindemann. I mean, I'm trying to be cavalier about it too much, I guess, but I regret that you have that kind of an attitude. I don't even see your name on here, so you're probably not listening. Maybe I'm wrong. I can't see it here. Anyway, that's how I feel about it.
I'd like to make a comment real quick. I just want to thank Patrick for coming to the meeting. And I want to say that I've never had an issue getting answers, getting a return phone call, a return email from him. I know he wears a lot of hats within the city, and I have been in City Hall when he has been on the phone with Mr. Gertz, so I know that he does speak to him on the phone. It's not complete radio silence. And, to say he can't take criticism, I've been attending the meetings for 1.5 years as I've been on council, and I've watched them a lot before then. And there were times that it was extremely embarrassing for the city. I have had, since I've been on council, people from other communities, not even within Reading, and city officials at that come up to me and talk about the craziness of our meetings and how out of control they get. And that's not a great image for our city. So I'm happy that he spoke up and said something. And, hopefully we can get that back under control and have some sort of mutual respect here.
Anyone else?
Disrespected him. Well, I said I thought.
Anyone else?
Tom Lynn? Chris?
Yes, go ahead.
Well, the last couple meetings, I've complained about the mayor and the safety service director for not being at the meetings this past year. Bo contacted me.
Mr. Gertz, would you kindly mute yourself so we don't have the background noise?
I'm not making
It
any
sure
noise.
is.
Well, maybe it's coming from you. Well, this will all be eliminated, obviously.
Well, it's not, I've muted myself a couple of times and it's coming from you. I'm sorry, Mr. Lynn, go ahead and continue.
Well, this past year, it's been hard to communicate for all of us just being on Zoom alone. The mayor explained to me some of the issues that they were having in communicating with the council, and they told me that I should just contact them by email. I respect that, and that's how it'll happen until I leave this post. So as long as they continue the communication and they're fair with all the councilmen and answer the best they can, that's what we're going to deal with right now, and that's what we got. So, Patrick, thanks for showing up today, and that's where we're at. So, thank you.
I'm sorry, Mr. Albrecht. Go ahead, Mr. Albrecht.
I'd just like to say that I agree with a great deal of what Patrick talked about. It reminds me somewhat of the 12 years that I was a safety service director, and things weren't always hunky-dory on council there. As Tony mentioned, 10 of the 12 years that we were in, we had a minority council. And there were times when my integrity was questioned. I got rather upset about it. But again, I think we all have a long way to go in terms of being civil and addressing issues without getting into personalities, et cetera. But there's a lot of truth in what he said. And like I say, I experienced some of that when I was a safety service director myself. So hopefully we can move forward and get some things done for the city that needs to get done.
Anyone else? Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I can't believe that anybody disagreed with Mr. Albrecht. Kenny. And I'm sorry that Patrick had to come on and express all that tonight. It's a shame. Certainly, I mean, there isn't anybody on council or that watches council that can say that it's very cordial and everybody seems to be getting along and doing well. It's pretty obvious what's happening, and it's a shame. I think that thoughts can be expressed and opinions can be made. People can disagree, and they don't have to belittle anybody or be negative. You have your own thoughts, make them clear. I hope that going forward, people will do more of that. Thank you.
Mr. Fishesher.
Thank you, Chris. I just want to say that I can remember back probably 3 elections ago, somewhere around there, when we took complete control of council and administration. And a very wise man said to all of us that we should be careful, because when you don't have anybody to fight with, you turn on yourselves. And I think that is a prime example of what's happened. It used to be, unfortunately, really, the Dems against the Republicans. And now we have no Dems, and so we're turning on ourselves. And, until everybody takes a really good hard look in the mirror and asks themselves, did I contribute to this? It'll continue. But if people just stop and take a look, try to be Christian, I think we can get through this, and we can actually have some function back in this council and back with the administration. That's all I have, Chris.
Thank you, Mr. Fishesher. Anyone else?
I would like to say something, Chris.
Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
I've heard a lot of people in the community, when they refer to council meetings, the term "the show" has been mentioned multiple times. That's not a good thing for a governing body such as ourselves. I'd like us to all spend the next 3 weeks before we're back in chambers doing some personal reflection and realizing that when we're back in, decorum's gotta rule when we come back in. We can't keep doing this. It's insanity us to keep doing this. We've got to come together. We've got 6 months left with this council, and we need to finish strong. We do. And this is just tearing everybody apart, and it's got to come to a stop. So please spend some time, do some personal reflection, and hopefully we can come out in July back in chambers strong as ever. Thank you.
You're on mute, Chris.
I was on mute, sorry. Mr. Steve, you didn't have anything, did you, Ms. Stevenson? Okay.
Hey,
I think
Chris,
the
real quick.
Go
Chris,
ahead. Ms.
sorry.
Go ahead, Sabrina.
I was talking with Pat, and I think he's now on the meeting. He's under the attendees line. Pat Ormond, not Patrick Ross, sorry.
Right, okay. We could go back and pick that up when we're done here, before we go into any other session. So I'll get Patrick in a minute. I just wanted to say that the last 6 people who spoke pretty much said anything that I would have wanted to say. I agree with moving forward only and just stop what seems to be Mother Nature for one of our councilmen, I would like to say, I guess. If he doesn't have the Democrats, he's going to turn on his Republicans. And that's a terrible thing to think about, but that's how I feel about it. So we'll go ahead and
Asinine thing I've ever heard. You've said a lot of them, but that's the worst. Go ahead.
see, there you go.
I do.
There you go. You're going to go ahead.
No, I'm not. There I go. I've checked into your background too. I really appreciate all your efforts to try to chastise, not chastise, probably, give me advice and.
You're gonna prove my point?
Let me finish. You
No, I'm
are-
not gonna let you finish.
You're an engineer, and I don't think that you're in a capacity to give me psychological analysis, you know, and I resent you're talking about picking on Mr.
You are making me sound like a saint.
Going after me.
The worse
Oh, yeah,
you talk
what's-
about me, the better it feels.
Oh,
It
that's
just
fine.
shows that I'm right.
Chris,
No, you're not right.
Chris,
Yes, Carla.
I'm not an elected official, but I've been in this position for 8 years now, and I can't. The fighting is ridiculous, and it's hard to report, be the clerk and report on these meetings sometimes. I'm sitting next to my dad, who's been an elected official for years, since I was born, and I have seen how vicious the politics in Reading are, and it shouldn't be. One thing I can say that's been positive about the politics in Reading is that people care. Democrat or Reading, Democrat or Republican, people care. I have been asked, will you take after your father and go for office or be an elected official? I will never do it. This is why. You can't have an opinion without being cut down, and it's not okay. I've sat here meeting after meeting and watched people just tear each other apart, and that's what we're speaking to. It's not that you can't have the opinion, but it's the way that we are addressing people. I have sat there on camera and been completely uncomfortable with the things that are being said because people are getting angry. If we can calm down, and it isn't just this grouping of people, this has been happening over a couple years now. I'm embarrassed. I don't want to be on council anymore. And that's sad. I've thought about taking up after my father. I don't want to. And anybody that wants to, I applaud you, because this is a hard job to sit in any of these seats, even a clerk. It is hard to sit here and do this and watch friends. I've known all of these folks on council, past and present, and it's just like friendships are being torn down too. And it's because of the passion, and I appreciate that and I respect it. But if we lose our respect for one another, that's when I'm out. And I'm sorry to get this emotional on a public forum, and again, just the clerk, but it's been too long, and it needs to be said, and it's disheartening, and it makes people who want to do something positive not want to do it. So I would like to myself ask that when we return to chambers, that we can all just calm down, and I would really like to not hear some of the language that I've heard before in the past meetings directed at anybody, at anyone. And I think we can do it. We're all adults.
All right, thank you, Carla. I don't know how we could follow any of this up.
I do have one other thing to say, Chris.
Go ahead,
And
Mr.
this
Powell.
is going to be directed at you and also at Tony. Whatever you two have going on, stop it. Take it off camera. Have it out. This isn't the time or place. And that goes to both of you. I wasn't going to name any names, but this is ridiculous.
Well said. Anyone else? All right, then we have someone who wants to address council, but Keith, I don't know how to get Mr. Orman on. Can you help us there?
Yeah, I'll give him the ability to speak. Mr. Ormond, if you unmute yourself, you should now be allowed.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay.
Um, My name's Pat Ormond, 2720 Maple Tree Court. Wanted to speak tonight a little bit about the, I guess you're putting on a first reading of a waste and recycling ordinance tonight. And I just wanted to comment about that real quick. Most of you probably know me and my wife as the couple that runs around Reading, picking up litter. And we're also very, very avid recyclers and looking forward to the prospect of having some full recycling here in Reading. So I'm addressing this really to administration and to council. So Mayor Bo Bemis, Safety Service Director Patrick Ross, council members. Tonight, as I see from the agenda, council is planning to introduce an ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for waste collection and recycling in the city of Reading. Speaking on my family's behalf and on the behalf of the many Reading residents whom I believe recycling should be a part of our city's complete waste management plan, it is my hope that our city administration and city council members can work together to bring Reading into the 21st century by offering full service curbside recycling to all residents at a reasonable price. By offering mandatory curbside recycling now, I believe our city will then be in a great place to obtain future grants from various sources to expand our recycling efforts to include our parks, businesses, and our many school campuses, thus helping to make Reading the truly forward-thinking visionary city that I know we all want Reading to be, a city where future residents and business enterprises would want to come home. In calling for our administration and council to pass the ordinance being introduced tonight, I look to the communities in close proximity to Reading. With the exception of Arlington Heights, every nearby or bordering community to Reading has a full participation curbside recycling program, including Amberley Village, Blue Ash, Evendale, Lincoln Heights, Lockland, Gulf Manor, Deer Park, and of course, Cincinnati. Some of these communities have been fully engaged in all-inclusive curbside recycling for more than 20 years. Each city pays for the program in a slightly different manner. We would simply have to find the way that works best for our city of Reading. However, the cost is truly nominal, no matter how it is paid for. Right now, the United States has generally become a throwaway society, with every American man, woman, and child producing approximately 1,704 pounds of garbage per year, roughly 3 times the global average. And until our consumer buying habits change, or the companies selling us our products take a more responsible role in packaging their products, recycling our reusable materials is the best remedy we have to address our garbage crisis as responsible citizens. In the meantime, recycling can actually save our country money, energy, and resources until more permanent solutions can be implemented. For example, the recycling of aluminum beverage cans requires 95% less energy to produce a new can than harvesting the raw materials from the earth to produce a new can, saving 14,000 kilowatt hours of energy per ton. Each ton of recycled waste paper can save as much as 17 trees, 380 gallons of oil, and 7,000 gallons of water versus producing new paper from virgin sources. Recycling your tin fruit and vegetable cans can save about 70% of the energy used to produce them from new raw materials. And though plastics and glass don't have huge resource savings as of yet, one recycled glass bottle can still have enough energy to power a small computer for 25 minutes,
while one recycled plastic bottle can save enough energy to power a 60-watt light bulb for 3 hours. And the recycling of cardboard, a staple of our Amazon e-commerce world, requires 25% less energy to remake new cardboard and saves 46 gallons of oil per ton produced. Cardboard is the #1 item clogging up our landfills today, yet it is so easy to remake from our old cardboard. My question to you, why throw these materials in the landfill to be buried forever when they can be of such benefit to us? The infrastructure to recycle and reuse these materials is in place, and Rumpke happens to be one of the country's leading and most respected authorities in recycling management. I would encourage anyone to tour the Rumpke Materials Recovery Facility in St. Bernard one day when tours resume. And yes, recycling on a citywide scale will each cost each of us a few dollars. But as we invest in our futures, our children's futures, and in my case now, our grandchildren's futures, shouldn't we invest a few bucks in a cleaner world for them to live in? Cleaner air, cleaner water, cleaner land. My wife and I walk our city streets picking up litter most every day for a cleaner future in Reading. We recycle where possible and properly dispose of our trash for a cleaner future in Reading. And we hope everyone in this city will join us for a cleaner future in Reading. So again, I do hope our city administration and council can find a way to make all-inclusive curbside recycling truly work for Reading and its residents. My family is at your service to help in any which way we can. Thank you for your time tonight, and I will leave you to it. Thank you so very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Orman.
Chris,
Yes, Mr. Lindeman.
Mr. Orman, I would like to thank you from the bottom of my heart for your response. It's great. I hope that Carla can play that back when it's time for my report. It would do well. I appreciate it so much. I really do. And I have spoken with you before, and I gave the impression that tonight would be the first reading for this. I've got some other ideas on that. I'm hoping that maybe we can go further than just the first reading for a lot of reasons. But thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Greatly appreciated. Thank you.
I'd like to comment as well, Pat. I thank you. I know we've met and talked, and I appreciate everything you've done. You and your wife are doing a great job. You got a lot of territory covered in town, picking up trash, and you and Sabrina and the Well We Thrive group, I think, has done a great job for the city, and shows how volunteers can accomplish so much. And I thank you for coming to the meeting tonight and speaking so warmly about what needs to be done in this field. And I know it's close to your heart. We've talked about it before. So thank you again for coming.
No problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Orman. I think everybody on council was really taking what you said in the heart. I know I was. Thank you. We won't have any executive session scheduled, so we will go to council committee reports. Finance Chairman, Mr. Gertz.
Thank you, Mr. President. First and foremost, I want to extend my sympathy to Carol and the Lichtenberg family with the loss of Jim. Jim and I worked together and along with Mike Kern to develop the tuition assistance program for Catholic education, and conducted golf outings and achieved a lot for, mostly I'd say for St. John Paul Academy, probably somewhere in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $400,000 was generated over several years. And Jim was truly the spearhead that was successful in accomplishing that goal and bringing and supporting Catholic education. He was a fervent member of the St. Peter and Paul Parish. And Denny, he may not remember, he's getting a little older, but Denny and I actually served his wedding and Carol's wedding so many years ago when we were a lot younger at that time, of course. And he also was you know, he's always in the forefront of the running of the Memorial Day Parade. He did it again this year, and it was merely a couple days after that he got sick and ended up. I'm not sure if they really know what his cause of death was, but anyway, he has been a man that's achieved so much. He loves the historical value of the city of Reading. His father, my father, were very close friends, along with all the other Lichtenbergs that were in the community through the years. They've all contributed in so many ways to the city of Reading, and I think it's appropriate that we all extend our sympathy to their family. I think his funeral is going to be Saturday morning at 10:30 at St. Peter and Paul. Better get there early because it'll probably be packed. He was a fine man, a great gentleman, and a great Catholic man. I have the greatest respect for Jim Lichtenberg, and I again extend my sympathy to his family. Wanted to announce that I did have a virtual Finance Committee meeting this afternoon with Mr. Fish and Mr. Lindeman. The budget has to be submitted by July the 20th. My apprehension of what happened with the permanent appropriation, I took the initiative to get a hold of the Budget Commission myself and have the documentation that will be needed. And my goal is, as I discussed with Mr. Lindeman and Mr. Fishesser, unless council has some other feelings, that over the next several weeks, I will work towards developing a budget for the year 2022. Citizens should understand that the state of Ohio requires that a budget be submitted so that when it's submitted to the county auditor, the county law director, and the treasurer, that we meet the requirements of meeting our obligations. They will review all of that, and not like, say, New York and some other states that don't require such strict controls over how you spend money. We do submit this budget, and if I remember many years ago when some communities wanted to try to manipulate the budget commission, and they would submit deficit budgets, and all they did was balance it. So my goal would be to submit a balanced budget, and my goal is to have that occur for a hearing on July the 6th, which would be the next televised TV meeting. I really would like to have more than one reading of it, but I don't know if that will occur. So I would like to have that happen. I will try to get the ad into the Cincinnati Court Index so we meet all the legal requirements and that we don't get tripped up on that. I think that happened maybe a year or so ago where we didn't get the ad properly done. So anyway, the short and long of it is my goal is to try to get the budget submitted and on time and early, because I'm going to be trying to work out to get out of this office for a little bit of a vacation towards the end of July. I also want to compliment the Legion for their Memorial Day parade. There were many people who worked on it. And Celine said she was one of the grand marshals. I remember we had some people who have been involved for many, many years who also were there. So I think it was great, including Jim Lichtenberg was one of them. So I think the Memorial Day parade went off real well. You know, I hope that tradition can continue when we get rid of these problems with the COVID. I did talk with, and I believe she's going to be on this evening. So in the process of the doing of the budget, I asked Sabrina to explore, which I don't know how we're going to pay for it as a society, not City of Reading, whether or not there's going to be any more stimulus monies coming. And I think she's working hard. I compliment her. So I'm not so bad. I compliment people who do a good job. So Sabrina's doing a fine job. She's seeking out whether or not we may get some stimulus money. I'm not sure I agree with the philosophy of what they're doing at a federal level. I guess it's possible we could get a pretty large lump sum amount of money. Right now, I'm not going to steal her thunder, but I guess you all may have read our reports of the numerous funds that we have. I don't know, some 30 funds. our fund for sewer service fee is well over $500,000. I have not talked, can't get through. I'd like to know who's going to be retiring this year and what that's going to cost us. We have worked with several of our employees, which I appreciate, that they're being paid out over a period of years, so the lump sum won't hurt us. Great place to work, right, Randy? You get accumulated sick leave and vacation pay. Sometimes we walk out with $50,000-$60,000. We got to be able to pay that. So I've sensed that fund's going to be needed to pay for those issues. I'd like to know, I'm going to ask Sabrina now, maybe she can look to it. We are going to be coming to the end of the obligation to pay for the Reading Road Streetscape Program. I think it comes due in 22 or 23. So that current streetscape program that was done with Reading Road, which I think kept us in a forefront. Many people wonder, know why we have such a wedding district. My opinion and philosophy is that with working with Bob Ashbrook and his father and family, and we, like I said, in 1983, and Danny and Linda Fitzgerald, Mark Fitzgerald, and Ron Edgerton, we worked to complete that so that we do have an environment that's not just a sewer that's under Benson Street, but it's actually a streetscape project that I think brought the wedding business to Reading and brought back that retail value. I don't think we're in a decline like some maybe other surrounding communities may be. And I also believe that our efforts to complete the streetscape project that we had on Reading Road was valuable in the same way. Now, that was about $2.3 million, if I remember correctly. But Vivian Yambe developed that streetscape plan for us. It actually goes from corporate limit to corporate limit. We've only completed one section. I would hope the council takes this up and looks at it more aggressively and starts thinking about another streetscape project for Reading Road, whether it's going to be at the corporate limit and work our way up. Logically, it would seem to me we would connect with the one that we do have, either going south or going north. But I think it behooves us to explore that and become more aggressive. As we pay off this from the fund that we created, the special capital fund, which, by the way, I would take a little credit for that. When this came down, the special capital fund came in existence when we brought back our $3.52 per thousand of revenue to the city. We split it in half and put half of it in the capital and half of it in the general fund. It all used to go to the general fund. The purpose of that is that when you want to do capital projects, you got something with which to purchase that. And we've been using that fund for trucks and police cruisers and whatever else that we need to do capital projects. Sometimes you be careful if the dollar goes into the general fund, it seems to slip away in many other ways than for capital improvement. As I think Sabrina, and I don't want to again steal her thunder, but we do have ourselves in a pretty healthy position, both in the general and the earnings tax funds right now. And we are in a position where we do have some monies in our, there's I think 2 or 3 different road funds. And we are in a position where we have some money that we may be able to do some other road work, which I would prefer to use for, say, Benson Street or something of that nature, and try to use the community development block grant monies, which I think the next cycle is about $145,000. And as I mentioned, the previous 3 years, that money has not been spent. We run the risk of losing it. They were going to put it into John's down at Canning Park, and found out it's in a floodplain, which I thought everybody else knew was in a floodplain. But nevertheless, I think the money should be used for either dilapidated property purchases, or if we can possibly put it into additional flood remediation. There's another potential flood remediation plan that could be used. I've talked to a gentleman about this for those monies. That would be at the more of the south end near Illinois Avenue. So I think we need to explore that, and I think it's important that we pursue the use of these monies. And having just a council meeting twice a month and not having any caucuses I think, maybe a hindrance in our ability to really work through a lot of the goals that we want to achieve as a council. So, it's unfortunate that there can be conflicts, but, ironically, the guy who said to me one time, and he always promoted it, was Butch Bemis. He said, if everybody thought exactly the same, you don't need 7 councilmen. You only need 1. And so we do need diversity. You do need to have difference of opinion. Now, how one approaches that, if you just like some methods that others use, that's your prerogative. But I think we need to be in a position where we can accomplish getting the goals we all want to achieve. And as committees in and of themselves don't solve that. You need all 7 councilmen to participate in the process. And sometimes I think we're going to hurt ourselves if we limit that ability to do that on an aggressive basis. Last and not least, because I'm biased in this, but I have a grandson who played on Muller's volleyball team. I used to think it was kind of a sissy sport, but it's not. I went to every game up there and they're very aggressive. But I want to compliment Muller High School volleyball team. They won the state championship, and ironically, which I've enjoyed the most, is it was 2 Southwestern Ohio schools. Elder ended up in the finals with Muller, and it was a great time and a great fun day and weekend. But I'm very pleased to say that Muller High School won out and became the state champions for volleyball this year. And so I'm sure there are other members who have relatives and friends that are participating in various athletic events that would like to be happy with the success of their teams as well. I know how hard these kids work, and I think it's appropriate for us to recognize that there are, ironically, my grandson is Lois Martin, who is Lois Albrink, Denny's cousin. That's her grandson also. And it's kind of comical when I think about it, because I don't know if Danny remembers this or knows it. Lou Albrink, her father, and I were quite combative in council. We had a lot of words with each other, and we were able to communicate and go to the same goals. And I kind of wish he were alive today so that he could enjoy the success of his great grandson. That's all I have for my my report for the Finance Committee. I do have some issues I'd like to explore further. I still want to meet with the Safety Service Director, and I hear what Mrs. Edichico said. I don't know when she was listening in, but I don't think she was listening in when I was leaving messages probably at 10 to 15 times, unless you got his same cell phone number, then you know when messages are being left. But I did talk to him casually. We're trying to set up a meeting, and that fell through. And that's all I have for that right now. But I have some other things I want to talk about later.
Mr. Lindeman. Go ahead, Mr.
You're going to
Lindeman.
find this hard to believe. Mr. Fishesher and I actually had a little conversation during that meeting with Mr. Gertz. We brought up, one of the things we brought up and talked about a little bit was that I thought that Patrick, we need to revisit his help. I know that we've talked about it in the past, but I think this is something that we should seriously consider to get more help for him, so that he can give some of the responsibilities that he has to other people, and take a little burden off of himself. The other thing that I mentioned was that I think that we should start another project looking into replacing sidewalks and curbs in Reading. I don't know exactly how all that works. I know that Mr. Albrink and Mr. Gertz have been there before, so hopefully we can at least get that off the ground here before the end of the year, looking into it.
Anyone else?
Just a comment, Chris.
Go ahead, Mr. Powell.
One thing with the budget for next year that I would like to see is for us to have a serious discussion and figure out a way to set aside a percent or two for when times may not be as good. I'd like to have some money set aside. However, we've got to do that. And, if we can have it put together a run of a few good years, we could actually build up a decent fund that hopefully could carry us through a lean time. So that's something I would like us to give some consideration to.
Okay. Mr. Lindeman?
Just to respond back to Dave on that, remember last year, we voted to add money to what we call the rainy day fund that the mayor's been asking us to get start up for several years, and we started out. I was going to ask Sabrina if she could give us a little update on how much money is in that fund. But we've already done something like that, Dave, but that would be a fund that we could add to. I certainly wouldn't have any objections to that.
Yeah, so just to give a quick update on that, thanks for that, Don and Dave. We put a portion of the collection on the sewer bill for the city, which is amounts to a little under 200,000 to a little over 200,000 per month. And then that means that we move 15,000 to a different account for our bill collection up to $17,000. And then I take about 1,500 to 1,700 and move it in that rainy day fund. So that's very helpful for the rainy day fund to flourish. Unfortunately, I'm at a training in Sandusky, so I don't have the fund right here in front of me for the finance officer training, but I know that I am up to date with moving that every month, including all the months last year through COVID. So if you kind of do probably the average of 1,600 a month for last year, and then the portion of this year, it's starting to steadily grow. And of course, nothing's been spent from there. Thank you.
Thanks for the update, Sabrina.
Okay, anyone else? Mr. Gertz? I think you're trying to talk, Mr. Gertz.
Yeah, you keep cutting me off. Okay. That's the growth fund too that we have, 333 fund, 343 fund. Currently, there's $78,257 in there. Now the sewer service fee fund that was created on, if I remember correctly, Denny, back when we were in office, and that's the money that we receive for collecting the funds for the Metropolitan Sewer District. We serve as their collections service through our water billing. So we receive a percentage of the amount of money that comes in for that. And according, put words in his mouth, it's up to Mr. Stevenson to define, but it's my understanding that can be used for any and all different kind of things that the city may want to spend the funds on. It may behoove us. That's not a bad idea. I think to probably should move some lump sums out of there and put it in the growth fund. There currently is $662,479 in there. We also have to be concerned about the accrued sick leave and vacation pay that I mentioned earlier, and we've been using that fund to pay that. It really comes down to how many people are going to retire and how they're paid out. There's only $16,000 in there, and I doubt that that's enough until I could find out how many people plan to retire, and I haven't gotten that information yet. So yes, we can move monies around. I don't know if we have to create a specific rainy day fund. There are about 30 funds that the city presently contain and own and operate. They are all used for various purposes. Some are limited. One, for instance, is the State Highway Fund. Only that money can only be used for purposes on Reading Road. It's the only state highway that we have. So we do use some of that for salt. We use it for people who might have an employee or part of a salary of an employee. Like I said, we went back to painting our own streets for curbs or for crosswalks and lining of the thoroughfares for highway purposes, where we used to contract that out about 40 years ago. So those monies can be used for doing things only on state highways. So we are limited in certain things that we do. Street maintenance and repair can only be used for that purpose. We did pass, which I'm pleased to say I participated in, when we put the 0.5% increase in the earnings tax on a ballot. I insisted and promoted that 1/5 of that amount would have to be used for capital improvements for roads only. And we do talk about the fact that we've got all these road projects. I don't know how many are going right now, but it weren't for that fund for us to be able to contribute our 50% towards that purpose, we wouldn't be getting these grants. We were getting grants for half of the cost of the project. Third Ridge Drive is a good example, if I remember correctly. It's a $2 million project. The state's paying $1 million of it because we have the ability to contribute and borrow $1 million from that fund at no interest for 20 years because we have the ability to use those funds. So, you know, I haven't been sitting on my laurels either all these years, so I think I have some credibility of how to approach things that are going on in the city. But that's create a separate fund for rainy day, David, but I don't know that it's necessary because you have several other locations that you can move money for that purpose.
My biggest thing, not necessarily a separate fund, just making sure we're putting money into it on a regular basis.
Okay,
Logical.
anyone else? Well, thank you, Mr. Gertz. Utilities, Lands and Buildings, Chairman, Mr. Lindeman.
Thank you, Mr. President. I hope you will indulge me here for a little bit. I've been working on recycling ordinance for some time, and I've talked to several different people. And what I want to do is I want to be able to check all the boxes. So when Mr. Orman referred to a first reading tonight of the ordinance, initially I was hoping that we would have the time that any individual resident that had a question or a comment would have the time and opportunity to come to the council meeting and make their thoughts known. And looking into it further and talking with Mr. Stevenson and Mr. Ross, I think we could accomplish that, but we don't have to drag our feet. This contract for waste collection and recycling ends this year in December. So this ordinance is only giving the Safety Service Director authority to go out for bids. This will give him time to submit specifications to the vendors and receive bids back. And he would like to have the bids back by the end of July. I may be wrong about that, but he wants them back as soon as he can, and he can't move forward until we give him the authority to go out for bids. So what my thought there is that if he's going to go out for bids, and that's the only thing that we're doing with this ordinance, then if we authorize him to do that, then between the authorization and the actual passing one way or the other, we're going to have to pass some kind of an ordinance for waste collection for sure. Will be the opportunity for residents to come in and voice their opinions. So like I said, I've been kind of going back and forth on this. I want to make sure that we checked all the boxes, but I want to move fast as I can because believe it or not, December is going to get here pretty fast. So anyway, again, we've said this before, but the city of Reading is only one of 4 local communities who do not have citywide curbside recycling at this time. And so I think that this is the time, and what I'm asking for is for council to consider this tonight. And that's my report, Chris.
Any comments from anyone? Mr. Gertz?
I just want to compliment Mr. Lindeman for all his hard work. I regret quite strongly that he's decided not to continue in the political realm and not run for re-election because he's an excellent councilman. And he continues to work even though what's he got, less than 6 months to serve, I guess. But I think that he's doing a great job. And I think of Pat Orman and the people of his area and working with Don in this particular capacity to develop this recycling is very valuable. And I think we should pass that ordinance tonight because it doesn't award a contract. It just requires bids to be taken. So I wholeheartedly support what he's doing this evening, and I hope that it passes.
Any other comments from anyone?
I have a comment,
Go
Chris.
ahead, Mr. Powell.
I've been in favor of curbside recycling since the survey went out with the water bill probably 5 or 6 years ago. The support for it that came back was overwhelming, and I was disappointed council didn't take action at that time about it. And I'm glad that we have an opportunity to take action now.
All right, Mr. Lynn.
I would also like to thank Mr. Lindeman and everything that he's done for the recycling here in Reading, and Pat Orman, especially for all the work he does just walking around. I saw him today on Columbia Road. I think he was with his grandkids. I respect that, utmost respect for that, him and his family for what they do and what they've done for Reading. But I do pay an extra fee for recycling that gets picked up on roadside on Friday for me. We do have the option for people to recycle down at the dumpsters at at Hayfie. So there is other options that we have that I think that are still there. So when you say we don't have roadside pickup, we do. You just have to pay the extra fee. And if you don't want to, you can bring it down to Hayfie. So there is options. We already have those options. So it's important. I think it's important to know that those are out there. So thank you.
Any other comments? Well, Mr. Lindeman, thank you very much for your report, like always. Let's see who is next. Zoning, Planning and Environment Chairman, Mr. Powell.
I have no formal report this evening, Chris.
Any questions for Mr. Powell? Then thank you, Mr. Powell. Laws and Contracts Chairwoman, Ms. Edichico.
Thanks, Chris. First, I also want to extend my condolences to the Lichtenberg family, especially my sister-in-law, Julie, brother Andy, my niece, and my nephews. Jim was a great man, and his passing is a huge loss to not only his family, but the community. I don't think we have enough time tonight to list all the organizations and things that he was involved in with the city. So yeah, he will be missed. Tonight, the second ordinance on the agenda is pertaining to the rental property registration that my committee has been working on. I hope everyone had a chance to read it over. I want to thank Chief Owens, Mark Bishop, and Dave Stevenson for their help. A first reading tonight is fine for this ordinance. The third ordinance on the agenda is regarding some changes to the Code of Ordinance and clarifying some of the language pertaining to the council meetings. Randy, Chris, and I worked on making these changes to better streamline the meetings. Also mentioned in the ordinance is meeting the first and third Tuesday of each month, and I have voiced my support for this. I do believe that meeting twice a month keeps the focus on the work and makes council more efficient. Other than that, I do have something I want to bring up during new business. That's all I have for tonight.
Any comments from anyone? Well, thank you, Ms. Edichico. Public Health and Safety Chairman, Mr. Fishesher.
Thank you, Chris. I originally was not going to have a report tonight because of all the work that I had put into the council rules ordinance. But being the chairman of the safety committee, I would be remiss if I didn't at least address fireworks safety, since this is our last meeting before the 4th of July. First, my recommendation, as I state every year, is to let the professionals handle the fireworks. Every year, fireworks causes 17,000 fires, injures over 10,000 people. Children under the age of 4 is the most injured age group, followed by children 10 to 14. Sparklers are not child's toys and can reach temperatures exceeding 1,200 degrees. They are the #1 cause of fireworks injuries. But if you just can't go without lighting off your own few fireworks, heed these safety tips. Number one, use only fireworks purchased from a reputable dealer. Number two, light the fireworks in a safe location well away from those watching. Aim the fireworks away from people, buildings, and dry vegetation, and have a hose or a bucket of water available before you start. If fireworks fail to light, do not try to reignite them, douse them with water, and discard. Finally, don't forget that not everyone loves fireworks as much as you do. Many of our veterans with PTSD suffer through this every year. Also, being a dog lover, dogs for the most part don't like the noise either. So be considerate of others. Finish up your display at a reasonable hour. I did see tonight before the meeting started, and this isn't in my report, Carla, I'll send it to you. Congratulations to the fire department members that were recognized with the 2020 annual awards. They are Fire Officer of the Year, Todd Burwinkle, Career Firefighter of the Year, David Kimball, and Part-Time Paid On Call Firefighter of the Year, Jacob Courtney. Congratulations to all those and to our fire department. We've got a great fire department. I hope everyone has a great 4th of July, and I look forward to moving back to Chambers next month. That's all I have, Chris.
Any questions or comments? Mr. Gertz?
Randy, I brought it up some time ago, and I think it was an investigation was conducted by the safety committee about the crosswalk down at the library. And I did have some concerns then about that, the way the crosswalk has a little peninsula that comes out, and then it has a crosswalk sign on it about people navigating that. And I think it came back that there weren't fewer or no accidents there. Of course, one man did get hit. I do know that by a truck. A year ago, but most recently I did notice, I don't know if I saw it on Facebook or somewhere, that an automobile wiped out the crosswalk sign that's on the peninsula. And I don't know if any research was done with that same Vivian Yambe study of the streetscape improvements. There were supposed to be some other streetscape improvements down along that area as well. And I don't know whether there'd be any other method, but I'd like to ask you to go back and visit that. Fortunately, I have a lot of people, obviously, that cross from Dave's ward in 1 and over into to 2, and kids are going to the library. And I do have apprehension that it's a difficult place to negotiate, especially now that we've had this incident where I don't know much about it. Maybe you know more than I, where that crosswalk sign was wiped out. That was mounted along that peninsula area that sticks out for that crosswalk. So if you look into that, I'd appreciate it. And secondly, as I reiterated earlier in my discussion, there's going to be a large problem with an employee relationship in the safety department. I would hope that we're investigating that and how it came about. I know it transpired over several years, and we were not successful in the litigation. And I'd like to know whether there's been any flaws and how we handled that, and that should be looked into. So I'd ask you to do that too. And in the safety committee, you know, we're supposed to do it on our committee. That's the only reason I'm raising it. Thank you.
To respond to that, number one, the accident that took out the pole was actually an elderly gentleman that had a medical issue and lost control of his vehicle. It was not due to somebody not seeing the jut out. As far as the employee, I have talked extensively with Chief Edens. I do know a lot of the background of it. You know, there were mistakes made, and there were mistakes made years and years ago, way back before even Scott Snow on this. And I'll suffice to say that, you know, even with those mistakes, sometimes you're not going to win. And you should know this, Tony, more than anyone probably sitting on council, because there's a partisanness on the part of the mediator, and we lost. I mean, it's that simple. Unfortunately. So, yes, I have looked into it, and I continue to talk with Chief Edens about different things related to that as we move forward.
Have you and your committee met on it, I assume, then, and run over in detail?
I have not brought it up
Maybe
in committee, but
you
I
get a
have had
report on what
committee meetings.
Okay. The other thing about the gentleman you said was an elderly man. At one time, I was suggesting that we explore some type of a. Well, we were up at when I was up at the volleyball tournament. Actually, I saw some large type of plastic pylons that were put down the center of the road to control traffic. So they were not ones that would cause damage necessarily to the vehicle, but it certainly gave a much more aggressive ability to know direction. And I do worry about that, even if you did something of that nature, or when Vivian Yambe did the study for us for the streetscape improvement of Reading Road, I do know along through there was recommendations of some landscaping. I mean, it could be put in a more attractive aesthetic manner. I don't know whether it'd be, I'm not a traffic engineer, so I can't give you what the answer would be, but I would like to see at least explored again, even if it's an elderly person who lose control, it still could kill a child.
Mr. Lynn, sorry.
Hey, Randy, I did like to follow up because we talked about a possible traffic study for the right turn and the left turn and the straightaway from Columbia onto Reading Road.
Right.
So do you have any idea or dates where that might happen?
Yeah, Tom, actually I do, because I've been on top of that also. With all that's going on, pipeline, the culvert on Hunt Road, it was kind of put back. I'm involved in the email that Patrick sent when I met with Patrick about it after our meeting. He sent an email right away to who he's hoping is going to be our contact with JMA, to try to schedule that in. But until Hunt Road and really, when we do this, Tom, I want to do it when it's actual traffic. Okay. I don't want to do it when, as an example, Thornridge is torn up, because it's going to skew the figures, and it's not, to my knowledge, it's not cheap to do these studies. We do have, and Patrick was going to look for that, and I have not gotten back with him on that. The Hunt Road, and I believe down to Reading Road, was done in the general study for the school. And he was going to pull that information up again. But we'll cover that. I'm planning on, once we get back in council, of having a committee meeting again, and we can kind of hammer that out, because I really want, the other thing I'm looking at is these body cameras. And, I really hope to move forward with it too. So we can cover all that when we get back together.
Sounds like a plan.
My comment on
Mr.
that,
Birch.
Randy, you might go back and talk to the county engineers. Years ago, they used to employ full-time traffic engineers in the county level. I don't remember which one it was way back when, but they came out and did traffic studies for us. And basically it was more on a courtesy basis to help us, because, that is I think that's still considered a county road. And they might be able to get some assistance to look at it and not have to spend any money, or hopefully less money. I don't know if they still provide that service or not. Do you remember, Denny? Denny's off.
I'll look into it, Tony. Thank you.
Any other comments for Mr. Fishasher? Mr. Lindeman?
We knew that there was going to be a problem to get this study. We knew that, we wanted to have school in, and then we had Duke Energy working, and then we had Hunt Road, and then we had Barron Ridge, and any number of things that would just not give us some accurate count if we did the study. I mean, we knew that. And so, tell you the truth, I can't see a real good count and study until school gets back in again and some of the road situations clear up.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you, Don.
Mr. Chico?
I just had a quick comment about the crosswalk by the library, and I know we had talked about this last year, and I found my notes. I had mentioned the flexible bollards that we could possibly look at as an option to put there in case someone would happen to run up on the curb that sticks out. I'm not sure if anything ever came of that, if anything into that, but I remember that we had talked about that probably about a year or so ago.
Well, we did get the bus.
What were they, Katie?
Flexible, if I'm saying this right, bollards, bollards. They're the posts that stick up, and if somebody hits them, they bend over. They don't break, but they basically serve to slow someone down.
I think that's pretty much what Mr. Gertz was kind of talking about. The giveaway. I know about a year ago, we did get the public bus to stop further from that peninsula island so that it wasn't blocking that area. You could almost put the rumble strips that you got on the side of the roads in that area too, to wake people up and alert them that they're in the wrong area. So there's a lot of things that are out there, just they all cost money though. Anything else for Mr. Fishasher? Well, thank you, Randy, for good meeting, comments, and not for not having a report. That was pretty good. I want to go ahead and go to the next report. Service Chairman, Mr. Albrecht.
Thank you, Mr. President. The city did advertise for and administer a test for mechanics in late June. Unfortunately, only 3 individuals registered. 2 actually took the test, and both of them failed. So the city has re-advertised and will give the test, retest July 31st. Hopefully more will register and successfully pass the test. The truck expected to be delivered the end of June is delayed because of construction delays and problems with getting the necessary chips that we've all heard about lately with all kinds of things, including trucks. So we're waiting for that to come in. The service department does continue to do street striping both at night and during the day. And the service department continues to mulch residents' tree branches and limbs that are set out on the curb. There is no set schedule for pickup. They try to get around and get that stuff picked up as soon as it's put out. So, and finally, again, I wish to offer my condolences to the Lichtenberg family. Jim was a great guy, involved in so many things, constantly contributing to all kinds of things, and he certainly will be missed. And that's it. Thank you.
Any questions or comments from Mr. Albrecht? Thank you very much, Mr. Albrecht. And Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
Thank you very much. I would also like to.
Mr. Albrecht and Recreation Chairman, Mr. Lynn.
All right. Thank you very much. I also like to send my condolence out to the Lichtenberg family. I know he's a big part of the Historical Society, but he's a big part of the history of my Reading and what I know to be Reading. I know he's in a better place, with his son, Mark, and I'm just praying for his family. I know everything. It's a good family. He's a great guy, and I'll be praying for the family. Other than that, the Reading pool, the crowds have been at record pace. The deposits from the concession stands have been higher than they have been the 2 to 3 years before this. So the crowds have been great at the pool. So I want to thank everybody who's coming and continue their support of the Reading pool. And other than that, I have nothing else to say.
Any questions or comments? Thank you for your report, Mr. Lynn. Any new business? I did hear okay, go ahead, Ms. Chico.
Thanks, Chris. I just wanted to bring this up since we had allocated some of the money from the community block grant to repave the portion of Benson Street from, I believe it's Jefferson to the bridge. I think now is the time to maybe assign this to a committee and look at what we can do to pave the rest of the street and also improve the area with a much needed new and an improved streetscape. I'm not sure which committee this would fall under, but this is something I would like to see happen. The Bridal District is vital to our community and our economy. The wedding and event industry is a $73 billion a year business, and we have brides and their families and friends from all over the country come to our city. I really feel like we could better capitalize on this. I was looking over the Bridal District inquiry emails that brides send out to get information, and out of the 11 emails from just this month, 8 of them were from out of town, one being as far as Liverpool, and another was from Chicago. We have the largest bridal district in America right here in our hometown. We need to recognize the importance of this area and look at funding or grants and ways that we can improve and add to this district and also grow and attract more businesses there. I talked to many of the vendors in the district, the 2 bridal events I attended last week, and they're all interested in improvements on the street. We also have 9 pages dedicated to the district in our city's comprehensive plan. I would like to see this added to a committee so we can start working on this. Again, I feel like now is the time. And for those who are interested, there is a bridal district meeting on Thursday morning at 10 a.m. in council chambers. And that's all I have for that. And I'm, like I said, I'm not sure which committee that would go into. Chris, you're on mute.
Yeah, any suggestions from anyone who, I can't remember when we were doing some council of the whole, we did discuss that. I didn't know if that was that in your, committee, Mr. Lindeman, or looking into the bridal district and improving streetscape? And
Chris, I was looking into that information just not too long ago, and to my disappointment, I have completed almost all of the things that I was given. So I think it's time for some other people to step up and take this sort of responsibility and carry it forward. I was in charge
very good,
of
Mr.
trying
Lennon.
to
I'm
water meters.
glad to hear that.
There is a 5-year plan that the Bridal District did. I'm trying to think of how long ago it was. Maybe about 2 years ago with Linda Fitzgerald. She was looking for a copy of it, but I haven't heard back from her yet. And obviously streetscape and improvements was top of the list. It was mentioned in there. So it's out there. I think Linda's looking for it for me. I don't have a copy.
Mr. Gertz?
Yeah, my daughter Susan Alsbach is on the, I don't know if it's the Bridal District Board or the Business Street Businessmen's Organization. So I know that she has been discussing some of these issues and has been exploring them as well. So I hopefully that I do know that, I don't remember the approximate date, but we did employ a contractor about 3 or 4 years ago that did go in and clean all the bricks and leveled them, and And actually it was complimentary that after all these years, 1983, that fundamentally it's all in pretty good shape. It's just when people such as cable television or even Duke goes in and all the utilities, by the way, are supposed to be underground as they're improved. And some of that didn't occur. I think it should have occurred more appropriately. But when they take the bricks up, then sometimes they don't put them back down correctly. And there are some issues there, I think, could be explored. Maybe we need to be a little more aggressive about restoration. I do agree that, and we looked into this too a few years ago. Those Cleveland pears they're nice for about 2 weeks and they're blossoming, but they're really not very good trees for that particular environment. And if you really want to talk about taking down trees and replacing them, they all show to some better ornamental type tree. But I think last estimate we got 5-8 years ago might have been $25,000-$35,000. So, but I do agree that we should explore that, and maybe that would be one step forward, because can't remember the type of trees that was recommended by our by KZF at the time, but they're a light leafy type tree, and they're ornamental. They don't grow fast, and there are better ways and better systems to put in. So I agree, we should probably go back and visit some of that. Thank you.
Yeah, the question is, if, do we have a committee that we can assign this Katie's request to? And I think at this point, we need a couple of weeks maybe to talk about it or think about it and get back with you in July. So
Well, maybe in
please
July.
bring that back up in July, Katie.
Okay, I'll make a note.
We could have a committee of the whole with the Bedford Street people and get a lot of more input to it.
All right, thank you, Miss. Well, thank you, Tom Lynn, I guess. No, that was new business. Any other new business? Okay. Guest administration, law director, Mr. Stevens.
I have no report, Chris. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. No questions for Mr. Stevenson? And then Mr. Gertz did send, did he send something in?
Yeah, I have a copy of it. Mel sent it through. He said for the end of business today, we collected $571,935. That's $143,770, 570 more than last year. But I want to question that with Mel too, is that you got to remember last year we were in the middle of COVID. So having 143,570 more is, I'm glad to see all of that and the growth that we have. So is returning to Bend. But then again, I still want to be cautious. I'm so conservative about the thing. Still has several days before the end of June. And we're shy about $8,300 from where we were at this point in time, I think, last year. So that's all he has. He's going to get a better report. I guess he'll send it out to everyone when he does that by the end of the month. That's
Okay.
that I got. I don't know if everybody else has got it.
Yeah, we are already halfway through the month. All right, and then auditor, Ms. Smith.
Thank you, Chris. There were a couple questions earlier in the night. I just wanted to kind of do some follow-up with. The streetscape will be paid off in 2023. So this year, 58,000 will be paid to that. And then by 2023, the payment will be 53,000. And I know that Mr. Gertz brought that up. Also, Dave brought up kind of the talk about funds and earmarking funds in other places. And while I'm in Sandusky, kind of best practices are leading us to maybe consolidate some funds. And that doesn't mean, of course, that we lose, earmarking or whatnot. But of course, on the appropriation side, when we go to spend money, we can have, less money spent. So that way we can still earmark money for projects. Of course, that needs to be communicated across the board. But while up here, there's a lot of different finance directors, that kind of work for cities that are charter based and villages and townships that, are kind of going to a streamlined process. And that's something I brought up with Patrick, and we'll be in continual, correspondence about that in general, because as I've told you before, everyone, in 2025, my system of accounting will kind of lose its light and it's going to have to go away. So when we restructure for a new accounting system, not only for myself, but for payroll and fixed assets as well, that's going to be something that we're going to need to talk about in the consolidation of funds and then also the account numbers past that point. So I just kind of wanted to give that update as well. But like I said, I love that we are kind of putting money every month to a little bit away, even if it's $1,500 to $1,700 into that growth fund. And today, I sent you guys a report over the weekend. I was working late over the weekend to kind of get everything updated before I had to leave. And then we also had server and print issues for myself. So I worked over the weekend, and I'm happy to report that in the general fund, there's 810,000, but in the city earnings tax fund, there's 2.6 million. In my 6 years, I have never seen the city earnings tax fund at that level. And of course, every 3 months you allow me to move up to 2 million, and I have not moved anything to date because our general fund has been healthy on its own without having to move, except for what I moved in January to March. But those funds kind of work in tandem, as we know, to have our general fund dollars used, except for when we move money every month from the city earnings tax collection and we move that to the streets and curbs fund, which even after paying the $76,000 towards the different road improvements that we've done, which once again, those are the 0 interest loans, and also a grant concept with those. And we have, after paying the $76,000, we have 1.1 million. So I know these numbers can also get piled up in your head. And I think that's another reason why to look at consolidation of funds a little bit. But I'm excited to report all that, as well as Mr. Gertz alluded to, for the treasurer side too, on Mel's side, they have been in talks of giving more money through different legislation. No one is able to give us an exact earmark of money. And that is partially because states are deciding they only talk about cities within the legislation, and then it's up to each individual state to decide how much the villages and townships, if anything, would get. But of course, there's a huge pushback from them saying, hey, we're not earmarked in this legislation. We need money as well. And as you know, from living in Cincinnati, we do have a lot of townships and villages around us. So I think it's just appropriate that as a city, though, we definitely hold our ground and say, if money's needed and what it's needed for, that we receive an appropriate piece if it's going to come down, regardless of how we feel about that. If there's money available in the state of Ohio, Reading better be getting some of that. So as soon as we know anything, we'll keep you updated. I have all payables done in my office, but as Mel gave his report at end of business today, that is even more money to add to these funds that you are not seeing because this was done over the weekend. And the treasurer's office has not closed cash receipts for the second time of the month. So that will just increase it. And then, of course, I'll have more payables later this month. I just also want to wish everyone a happy Father's Day that's on council and administration. And just if anybody has any questions, let me know. This has been a great week for me to be away to kind of learn best practices and stay up to date on a lot of things going on, not only in our city, but cities around us. So that's all for me, Chris, unless anybody has any questions.
Any other questions? Well, Sabrina, I'm so glad that you're out there learning for us. Mr. Gertz, did you have something?
Yes, I do. I want to compliment Sabrina. I don't know if it was her idea fully or it was We Thrive or whomever took that over, but your idea to, and I know you've been aggressively involved, not just in the finances of the city. By the way, she saves us a lot of money just by not having a deputy auditor and being a full-time auditor. I think that's one way we're saving money too. But back to what I was going to say, the idea of having all of the planter boxes adopted by numerous people in the city was a great idea. I know you were a part of it, but I don't know who initiated, but I want to compliment all those people who volunteered. They got it done before my wife and I could get a chance. Is that a good excuse or not, I guess? But anyway, I guess there's 25 or 30 of those, and they all are looking pretty nice. So I compliment you on that. And I, with great chagrin and regret, unfortunately, my nephew Mel will not be running for treasurer. He is works at the Hamilton County Board of Elections, and as a result of his employment, they will not let him run for political office. But I'm so pleased that he continued the plan that we set forth many years ago, back in 1978, where we eliminated the tax commissioner and a deputy treasurer, which were 2 full-time jobs that have never truly been replaced. We still had 2 people working in the tax department. People should know that Mel acts as the tax commissioner with the same salary that he gets for being treasurer, as I did in that time. Carl Werner, he also was a Republican treasurer, continued that policy. And over the last many years, I haven't calculated the exact numbers, but I would guess somewhere in the neighborhood of $2 to $4 million has been saved through the treasurer's department by operating with that method of the treasurer being the tax commissioner and not having a full-time deputy treasurer to take care of business. He uses the people who are in his office. And also Sabrina is full-time. She's a full-time auditor, which we eliminated a full-time job of a deputy auditor, which has saved the city much money over the last going on 8 years, I guess. So I think people should know these things and understand how we operate here in the city already. Maybe I'm too stingy or too conservative, but I don't know if that's a possible word. It can even be used. Can be too conservative. Thank you, Sabrina.
Thanks, Tony. I can't take credit for the flower pots in its entirety. Our group has been amazing at actually putting that together. And it's really awesome to see a group of citizens really work to make our community better. And there's actually 62 pots in our town. So, and then also people planted other areas because I had more people that wanted than I had flower pots available. So the Reading Bridal District, the group actually does the whole Benson Street area, as well as some of the property owners of bridal stores on Reading also do some of that area. And then a lot of community members, families, and groups, Girl Scout troops, do the other ones. So it's really amazing to see. And as far as the city's concerned, I live here, I work here, and I definitely want to make things better where I can, just like everybody else does. So thanks.
No other questions, no other comments? Thank you, Ms. Smith. We will go to the legislation. Do we have any resolutions?
No, sir.
No resolutions. We will go ahead with our second reading of our first ordinance.
An ordinance directing the Safety Service Director to secure bids for the permanent underground relocation of utilities previously installed overhead in the vicinity of Bolster Drive and Columbia Avenue in order to achieve compliance with zoning requirements of PDD number 2, the Reading Community Schools Plan Development District, and declaring emergency.
I would like to have a second, let this be the second reading. I have not had any return calls to tell me whether we have been taken any other alternate bids. If we have, it may not be necessary, and there's no timetable. I'd like to see a timetable if that exists. The ordinance may not be necessary. The alternate bids, though, and by the way, just because it's under $50,000, if it in fact is, that doesn't preclude us from requiring to take bids so that the council can participate in decisions. I know some don't agree with some of the theory of taking it under Columbia Avenue, but I'd like to just have a second reading and see if I can get it some answers first.
If there's no motion to suspend the rule, then it's a second reading only. And we'll go ahead and have the the second ordinance read, first reading.
An ordinance establishing a registration system for residential rental property and adult tenants and occupants thereof.
Any motions? Then that'll be a first reading also. So, Mr. Gertz?
Yes, I was thinking today that there, I don't know the number. I think it's probably in the neighborhood of, I'm guessing, this is at a Chico, could probably be more accurate. But if there are 1,000 or 1,500 potential individuals, corporations, et cetera, that would be affected by this, I think it would be appropriate that they be informed in some fashion. I know it could be an expense, but it would be helpful to send a letter to these property owners and investors. And I mean, just for instance, I think there's Lakeshore Apartments alone has 400 units up there, and it might be important for them to know that this is unfolding so that they could play a part in the discussion if they want to, since we're going back to open council meetings in our own council chambers. So I don't know if that can happen. Maybe Mrs. Etta Chico could talk to the safety service director, find out the cost. I believe we have a somewhat of a figure from the auditor's office of the people who are that own properties of that nature, and you can get it from the Secretary of State too, their statutory agents. If we had to, it might take a little work, but I think it would give them an opportunity to participate in the discussion.
I do
Did
feel,
you? And Mr. Lynn, go ahead.
I would like to have the ordinance read in whole so everybody knows exactly what we're passing here. I don't know if we can put this on the website or something, just so people can read over it so they know what we're voting on. I think that would be a good idea. I'm just throwing that out there because I think it's important to read the whole document.
That was going to be my suggestion. I've talked about this for many weeks in council on public meetings. If the ordinance were to pass, all the property owners will get letters. We've already discussed that as well. Yes, I agree to read it in its whole. Mr. Powell has shared it on Facebook. I like the idea of putting it up on the website as well.
Well, if we want to go ahead and do that, Carla, can you go ahead and read the whole ordinance?
Yes. Whereas the codified ordinances of the city of Reading currently includes chapters pertaining to structures covering exterior property maintenance and existing structures. Whereas such chapters define the responsibilities of both the owners and occupiers of such structures. And whereas the failure to abide by these provisions can lead to substandard housing and create conditions such as structural deterioration, lack of maintenance, the appearance of exterior of the premises, the existence of fire hazards, and unsanitary conditions that constitute a menace to health, safety, welfare, and reasonable comfort of the residents and inhabitants of the city. And whereas the prevalence of such conditions can have the further effect of creating blighting conditions and initiating slums. And whereas it is in the public interest and beneficial to the health, safety, and welfare that such conditions be prevented and eliminated if found. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Reading, Ohio. Section 1. The owner of any residential structure located with the City of Reading shall provide written registration to the building commissioner of any residential structure or part thereof that is intended to be rented or leased. Such registration shall include the street address of the property, the number of units therein, the name of the owner or owners of the property, and the names of all adult tenants residing at the property listed by the unit or apartment number, if applicable, and shall describe the approximate dates of the rental or lease term. The registration shall be on a form provided by the city and available on the city's website and at City Hall. The registration shall be provided no later than 30 days following the effective date of this ordinance and shall be updated thereafter prior to the commencement of the occupation by any new leasee or tenant. Section 2. As used in this ordinance, the term owner includes all persons and entities, including but not limited to individuals, corporations, partnerships, trusts, estates, and other entities who have an interest in any residential structure or that is rented or being offered for rent in whole or in part to any person or persons. Owner includes agents and other property managers who conduct business on behalf of the persons and entities having an interest in the property. Section 3. As used in this ordinance, the term tenant includes any person over the age of 18 years maintaining a residence in the residential structure, regardless of whether that person is the named lessee of the premises or any part thereof, or whether that person is responsible for the payment of periodic rent. Tenant does not include visitors or temporary guests who do not intend to establish a residence in the premises. Section 4. The registration provided herein shall be without charge. However, the failure to make timely registration or update an existing registration shall be subject to a $100 fee. Section 5. This ordinance shall go into effect on December 1st, 2021.
Chris, you're on mute.
Thank you. If there's no motion then we'll just have a first reading. Okay, so that was a first reading. We'll go to our next ordinance.
An ordinance amending certain sections of the Reading Code of Ordinances that address council meetings and declaring an emergency.
Chris? Chris,
You're on mute, Chris.
you're muted again.
All right, Randy, go ahead. What's up?
Yeah, a couple things with this before we get into it too deep. Did you guys saw with the attachment, I used the codified ordinances that are published on the webpage. Those ordinances were last updated December 31st. And the local legislation went through September 17th of 2019. So to me, that was the most newest version that we have. And that's how I based my writing of the ordinance. Yesterday, Don Lindeman brought a piece of legislation or a copy of the certain sections that did not jive with what was in the Code of Ordinances. So I spent today trying to find out where they came from, and they were passed at a swearing in on January 1st of 2008, I believe. And there is no ordinance to that. There is no resolution. It was just evidently it was mentioned that it was just talked about earlier, or that was discussed in a meeting earlier, but I could not find any notes on that meeting also. But reading over that, there's three changes that I would like to get a motion to amend my motion, my ordinance, or the ordinance that's on the books right now, the first change would be in the first whereas. I state that has not been updated for over 20 years. Certain sections have not been updated for over 20 years. I would like that changed to 12 to better conform to, because the 20 years was addressed in this piece of paper or legislation that Don gave me. The second change would be in 21406, section D, under special meeting. Instead of the president of council being listed, it would be the mayor. And the final change is the annual deposit. If they want to be informed of the special meetings, that's section E. The price would go from $2 to $50. Those are the only three changes that really affect this ordinance. And other than that, I think the ordinance stays as is. So I would like to make a motion to make those changes and go ahead and proceed with this ordinance.
I'll second.
Motion made by Mr. Fishesher, seconded by Ms. Edichico. And I know, Mr. Lindeman, you'd like to make a comment first, so go ahead.
Well, I think that the changes were based on the wrong information. With all due respect, I have confirmation back in December of '07. In the laws and contracts, Mr. Gertz asked for a short meeting regarding the new council rules. The minutes for the inauguration ceremony council meeting on January 1st, 2008, motion was made by Mr. Champlin and seconded by Mr. Gertz to adopt the new rules of council, which had previously been discussed. Motion carried 7-0. On council minutes January 15th, 2008, section 4, acceptance of minutes. Motion was made and seconded to approve the minutes of December 18th, 2007, January 1st, 2008, etc. Minutes were approved without objection. So what I shared with Mr. Nesbitt and Mr. Fishesher were the rules of council that went into effect on January 1st, 2008. The rules of council that Mr. Fishesher, Mrs. Edichico, and Mr. Nesbitt were looking at was 1998. With all due respect, I don't think it's necessary to pass this. I think it should be revisited using the correct document and then make your changes and bring it back. I think that being in council chambers in July, we certainly had every opportunity to revisit this on the correct document with changes and pass or not pass it. My personal comment is many of us are not going to be on council next year. So why don't we just wait and let those people that are on council in January decide how many meetings they want and how they should be conducted, et cetera, et cetera. That's my personal comment. But I think this should be pulled from contention. No vote on it tonight at all.
I have a comment, Chris. Just based on what I had heard. Could you mute, Tony? I'm getting feedback. Oh, thank you. Based on what I've heard, though, that it was not an ordinance, it was not a resolution. It was never codified. So could it be viewed that that set of rules was created for that set, basically that council session, those 2 years, and that we've kind of been operating on this quasi whatever we've been operating on, but nothing actually formalized or written down. But since it was never an ordinance and never codified, is it even effective, even if it was passed by a council back in '08? And maybe Dave could weigh in on that.
Council has the authority to set their own rules. They have certain requirements to set times for meetings and to make information regarding special and emergency meetings available. Those are under the Open Meetings Act. The bottom line is that council has the authority to change its rules at any time. In terms of this particular legislation, that ordinance is on the books. If you want to, I think it would be cleaner, and I think this is what generated the discussion. I think it would be cleaner if that entire section were repealed and council would pass their own rules. It does not have to be done by legislation. It doesn't have to be a resolution. It doesn't have to be an ordinance, because council sets the rules. And from a practical standpoint, if you do it by resolution or by ordinance, the mayor has a right to veto council's rules. And that makes absolutely zero sense to me, and I don't think that's the state of the law. My thought, frankly, would be is to repeal the chapter that we have we're trying to amend here, and have council decide what the meetings are going forward. And if council that's elected in November chooses to change those rules, they certainly can do so at the first meeting that they take office. That's typically the way these things are done.
Any other comments from anyone?
One follow
Yeah, I got a
Wait,
comment on that.
Mr. Fishasher, go ahead.
Yeah, the problem is, and Dave, you and I've had that conversation as I was drawing this up. This is a prime example of why it almost should be an ordinance, so that everybody has a copy of it and it's in the books. Don Lindeman comes to me at the 11th hour with this thing, and he's the only one with a copy that I know of. I've never seen it. I don't think, I'm sure Katie's never seen it, and Chris never saw it. So the three people that were kind of coordinating all of this and discussing it, none of us saw this change of rules. So I mean, if you get it through an ordinance, and I'll grant you that the mayor can veto, but I would hope the majority of council could override the mayor's veto too.
Mr. Powell.
Just a quick follow-up on that. Regardless of what happens with the new council coming in January, we as a body need to discuss how we're going to conduct business for the next 6 months. And we need to come to a consensus on that. I think that should be our focus at this point. And then if we want to do something different in January, then that's up to the next body. But we've got to decide now how we're going to conduct business for the next 6 months.
In response
Mr.
to what
Lindeman.
Randy is saying, I've been doing this for 25 years. Council rules have been changed periodically during that period of time. When I first started, we were meeting twice a month. We were meeting at 8 o'clock at night. Nobody liked that because we never got out of there until 11 or 11:30. The bottom line is since I've been doing this, we've met twice a month. We've met 3 times a month. We've met 4 times a month. We've had rules that reserve certain Tuesdays for committee meetings. All of those were done by council rules. What the Open Meetings Act requires you to do is to establish a time for your regular meetings and to establish a method by which people can find out when and how and where special and emergency meetings are being held. That's all it requires. One of the reasons we're running into trouble here is because the codified ordinances have carried over an ordinance that requires us to meet every other Tuesday at 8 o'clock.
instead of 7:30, which we've now been doing for over 20 years. And because we've changed it periodically by council rule. And I agree with what Dave said. The first order of business is, what are we going to do between July 1st and the end of the year? And if the next group of guys wants to come in and meet 5 times, or meet on Wednesday, or meet on Saturday, that's up to them.
Mr. Lindeman.
I think I agree with Dave Stevenson. Because what I heard him say, and maybe didn't, was that maybe we should start with a clean slate. I appreciate all the work that you, Randy, and Chris and Katie did, but I think you were working on the wrong piece of information. I know that I don't like anybody giving me something at the last hour. I certainly had no intention of, I could have just waited until tonight and kind of talked about it. But I didn't want to do that. I gave a copy to Randy. I gave a copy to Chris. I walked over to Randy's house to deliver it. I wasn't trying to pull anything the last minute here. I was just trying to bring something to the attention that the next day, Randy and I were both down at City Hall looking through the minutes and looking through the ordinances. And that's where I found that, I don't know, Mr. Albrink, if he has good recollection, he was the clerk back when this motion was made and carried by a 7-0 vote. If the motions that we make on council really don't mean anything, then I think that that's a problem.
Any other comments from anyone? Mr. Gertz.
Well, Mr. Nesbitt, you told us that everything should be in a committee. And we're talking about how the legislature are going to change the laws of how they conduct business. Maybe Mr. Powell attended some meetings. I don't know. I know I did not, or if there was one, I was not aware of it from Mrs. Edichico. I'm on the Laws and Contract Committee. And as Mr. Lindeman pointed out, I was on the Laws and Contracts Committee when these rules were promulgated and passed many 12 years ago. So by your own gauge of how things should be conducted, Mr. Fishesser's on the Safety Committee. It never went into the Laws and Contract Committee that I know of. Mrs. Edichico's chairman, and maybe I'm misunderstanding my rules of government, but the president of council conducts the meeting. He don't vote or control the rules of council. That's up to the members of council to determine the rules. So I don't even know that you should be a participant in the process.
I believe my
Would you let me-
participation was not as great as people were making it.
Well, if you let me finish, I'm trying to
Well,
make a point. I'd like to make a point that this is premature. I think it should, and I'm not even sure we should do it with the committee of the laws and contracts. That's why I believe that we've been very effective by having legislative caucuses on the second and fourth Tuesdays of the month. Because this would be something we could thrash out on a second Tuesday night instead of being here at going on 10 o'clock, trying to figure out what we're supposed to be, what is the law. And it just goes back to the whole problem with using the company, I forget the name, American Legal Services or something like that, that are supposed to bring all of our records up to par. And we haven't spent the money on it. Sometimes we didn't have the money. I don't know, Dave, you correct me. I think it's around $10,000 to have them come in and go over all of the rules of council, all of the ordinances that are passed. I think to this day, I believe the zoning fees are still not promulgated out to the public in a correct fashion. I don't know if that's correct or not, but I do. That's part of why I think we need to thrash out some of these things in a committee of council, or at least it should have gone to the Laws and Contract Committee and then discussed this. And I was sent out. I may have lost it. I'll be frank with you because I've been very busy at the office, but I really didn't get a thorough examination of all these documents till today. And then I was talking to Mr. Lindeman because we had the finance committee meeting. He pointed out to me that this was passed about 12 years ago, which is in contrary and conflict with what's on the website for our code of codified ordinances. That if you go look up the code of codified ordinances, it don't give you the rules of council. It gives you this other rule from 1998, which is outdated and gone. This thing should be tabled. We should have a committee of council whenever, I don't care, between now and next council meeting. I think the chairman of the Laws and Contracts Committee, if you want to do it out of committee, we should have a meeting I think that the public ought to have an opportunity to participate. I've had people coming to me and saying they like to address council, but they don't know how to use all this Zoom stuff. Pat Orman's a good guy. He knows how to do it. He was a former educator, retired, so he's very knowledgeable about these things. But the whole process has been kind of aborted and improper. That's my opinion.
Ms. Chico.
Regarding bringing this before a committee, this was actually something that Randy got the ball rolling on. And I looked it up, noticed that the ordinance that I found, I, again, have not seen this from 2007, 2008, but what is on our code of ordinance on the city's website had the meetings at 8 o'clock twice a month. Basically, all we wanted to do was clean that up, change the time to 7:30 so that it was in the ordinance and that we had a structure to the meeting.
Mr. Fish Escher, did you have a follow-up that you wanted? Mr. Fish Escher, is that your hand up? You're on mute, Mr. Fish Escher.
There we go. Now I'm mute. Okay.
Chris?
You're back on mute.
He's off now.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
I didn't mean, and Don, I didn't mean that you were trying to throw a ringer in. I just wanted to point out the fact that, I didn't have a copy of it. And that's part of the problem that I saw and that Katie and I discussed is that, there's all these things out there, but not everyone has copies of them. And so the only thing that you can really go back to is the codified ordinances. And so to say that, it was based on the wrong piece of literature. Yeah, you're right to a degree it was. But let's take all of them out of it. Let's take the old ones, which are an attachment to this ordinance, and it's not an attachment to the final ordinance. It's just for to help you guys so you didn't have to go online and try to find all this stuff. Take that out of the picture. Take the one you gave me out of the picture, Don, and just look at the ordinance that I have written, and all it is updating to the new standards what we have. Most of the stuff in there is changed, and you're right, some of it was changed back in 2008 when this was passed, but I didn't know that. And it doesn't make a difference whether it was or not. The only difference it would make is instead of red ink on yours, it would be in black ink. As far as not going to committee, as Katie said, I kind of was the one pushing this and then got with Katie on it, and she and I worked together on it. It kind of reminds me of somebody putting in a final budget without having a committee meeting. It's kind of like the pot calling the kettle black. That's all I have to say on that. If you guys want, that's fine. We'll make this a first reading. And as far as audience participation, I think council should be able to at least make their own rules.
Mr. Lindeman.
I agree. What I agree with is that we should make our own rules, and whatever those rules are. But I just felt that the document that I gave Randy and you, Chris, was much clearer than the way what I got from Randy. which is, maybe it's me because of my age and so on and so forth. But sure, I mean, I think we should make our own rules and decide what we want to do. It doesn't make any difference to me. And, in 6 months, I'm not going to be here to be at 1 meeting or 2 meetings or 4 meetings. It doesn't make any difference to me. I wanted to follow what I thought was right. And when I looked at his document, I said, oh, wait a minute, this is not the right thing. Who gave me the document? It was our mayor. When I first got on council, it's one of the things that he gave to me was the rules of council. So the other thing I wanted to say is that, Chris, it was you that precipitated Patrick to get on tonight, Patrick Orman. I appreciate Tony's comments about him being educated and everything, but I know how much trouble you went through to get him on. I appreciate that. That's it.
Any other comments from anyone? Well, I have a motion made by Mr. Fishesher and seconded by Ms. Edichico to change some of the verbiage in the ordinance that was handed out today. The first one was I think it had to do with the 20 years to 12 years in the whereas. Down in let's see which one.
214.06.
Yeah, so on D, it was changed from president of council to the mayor.
Mhm.
And can you help me with the third one that was the change?
And under E,
It would be E.
it
Okay.
was switched from $2 to $50.
Okay. So that was a motion to change those. So I'd like to go ahead and have a roll call on those three changes.
Mr. Powell,
Hang on, I think Mr. Gertz had something.
Yes, I do. I am one to ask Dave, that notice to the newspaper, are we going to be, is that escalating the value? So I'm a little concerned about charging $50. I don't know that that's a lot of money necessarily, but I don't even know that there should be a charge. I thought for the open meetings laws and notices, so forth, I didn't even know you could charge anything.
News media is treated
Mr.
differently.
Gertz, that's off of your literature.
Yeah, I'll ask Mr. Stevenson. I wasn't talking to you.
Mr. Stevenson, go ahead.
Look, under the open meetings law, the news media is treated differently than other people. The open meetings law states that every public body, which is us, by rule shall establish a reasonable method whereby any person may determine the time and place of all regularly scheduled meetings and the time and place and purpose of all special meetings. And with respect to special meetings, I'm not going to read the whole thing. The bottom line is the news media who have requested notice are entitled to receive notice, and that notice is free. The rule also requires that any other person upon request and payment of a reasonable fee may obtain reasonable advance notification of all meetings at which any specific type of public business is to be discussed. So if somebody wants to know about any public meetings where we're going to talk about zoning changes, we can charge them a fee for receiving that notification. The fee does have to be reasonable. I'm not sure I can defend a $50 fee for any kind of notice like that.
Okay. So any more comments before we do a roll call vote for making those three changes?
Yeah, I got one.
Go ahead.
I do, Chris.
Go ahead, Randy.
The $50 came from, the $50 came from the rules from Mr. Lindeman that I'm assuming were written according to Mr. Gertz by him. individuals may receive notification of special meetings by making an annual deposit of $50. It's in your literature or in your rules.
I was wrong then.
With it being listed as a deposit, wouldn't that be something that as the notice, they have to have $50 on deposit with the city? And then as we need postage and handling, we pay out of that until they need another $50? Is that the way I'm reading it?
I don't think,
Yeah,
Dave, I think the way I read it, the news organizations don't pay that. It's individuals who want to get a special meeting notice. And that's to defray
Limit.
postage and handling.
it doesn't seem like there's a time limit on what that $50 will last till. I think Dave Powell makes a good point that once that $50 for that person is consumed, it'd be fair to go back and ask them for another $50. But it doesn't say that.
And if the communication is via email, I think charging a fee to email somebody is unreasonable, because there's not, other than the time spent to compose the email, there's not a lot of expenditure there.
Randy, what do you want to do there? Drop it back to $2?
I'll drop the whole damn thing out of there if you want. I
Okay,
mean,
well, we'll just be
I don't
voting on the
care.
2 changes then.
and Dave, just
The motion's on the
one
floor.
other thing, Dave, just so you understand the emails. The emails is for council notification, not individual.
Well, why couldn't we email an individual instead of sending them postage?
Because you'd have to, well, I guess you could get their email if they ask for it, but I have no problem with that. If you want, I'll tell you what, let's table this, Chris. I'll withdraw, and Katie, I'm sure, I hope you'll withdraw yours. Withdraw the whole damn thing. You guys read over this, make changes. We'll discuss it at the next meeting and take it from there.
Sounds good. I'll withdraw my
I have
second.
no problem with that.
Okay, any other comments on that?
Thank you very much.
Then we've tabled the ordinance until Randy can bring it back up again. So you'll make your couple of changes, Randy, and then send it back out again?
I can do that, yes.
Okay, so it's gonna be a brand new one, so. All right,
Well, I'm modified of this one.
Why can't we have a Laws and Contracts Committee meeting to discuss a lot of this, Mrs. Edichica? Before the next meeting, that's 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
We can, and there's not much really to discuss about it, but we can have a meeting. I mean, to talk about changing the time from 8 PM to 7:30 and from 24-hour notice to 12. But if you want to have a meeting, we could set that up now.
You're talking about in that ordinance, if I remember, eliminating second and fourth meetings. I haven't read it all
But
that.
that's already in the ordinance to meet on the first and third. That's already.
That's not in the rules of council though, so I think this needs to be ferreted out. Maybe the Laws and Contracts Committee at least to do it, and the other members who want to sit in can listen. Just don't do Thursday night. That's half price at BQ for wine. Since we're not meeting on the second and fourth or the fifth Tuesday, you could have a meeting for the Laws and Contracts Committee on any of those 3 Tuesdays at 7:30.
Does next Tuesday, the 22nd, work for everyone?
I can make it.
Yep, I'm free.
Randy, will you be able to attend?
I Probably will not be there. I have out of town company at our house for that week, but I'm not on the committee anyway.
Right, only committee members would be able to speak, so Randy could sit there, but he wouldn't do much, he couldn't help much.
Instead of 7:30, could we make
Right.
it earlier, Katie?
6:30.
6:30 would probably be better. That way, in case the discussion winds up extended, I can still get up for work on Wednesday.
Yes.
I can do
All right.
6. I do 6:30, but I'm usually up at 5 anyway. What time you go in, Dave?
I usually try and get there between 7:30 and 8.
I got a longer drive probably.
Yeah,
You want 6:30 in the morning or 6:30 p.m.?
PM, please.
Yeah.
Okay, next Tuesday, 6:30.
Everyone mute.
No, I'm not.
Question, Chris. Katie, can Chris or Randy or myself, I don't care, get you a copy of what?
It's hard to hear. Can everyone mute except Mr. Lindeman?
I just want to make sure that Katie has a copy of the ordinance or the rules that I was given by the mayor.
Thank you.
Next ordinance, please.
An ordinance authorizing the Safety Service Director to solicit bids for waste and recycling services and declaring an emergency.
Make a motion to suspend the rules for a second and third reading.
Second.
I know I heard Ms. Edichico make a motion, but I could not tell from all the background noise who made the second.
Mr. Lynn,
Lynn.
Motion made by Ms. Edichico, seconded by Mr. Lynn, to suspend the rule that requires a second and third reading. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser,
Yes,
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
Motion to adopt.
Second.
Motion made by Mr. Lynn, seconded by, maybe a hand there, if you could help me, Mr. Gertz. Roll call.
Mr. Powell,
Yes.
Mr. Gertz,
Yes.
Mr. Lynn. Oh,
Yes.
Mr. Albrecht,
Yes.
Mr. Lindeman,
Yes.
Mr. Fischesser,
yes,
Mrs. Edichico.
Yes.
That motion passed. Yeah, that ordinance passed. Ordinance number.
2021-21.
Any other business?
I don't have
Yes.
any other business, but I would like to wish my father a very happy birthday tomorrow.
Happy birthday, Denny.
Annie.
happy birthday, Danny.
Which will be in about 5 minutes.
Somewhere.
Chris.
Mr. Lindeman.
I just want to thank everybody for passing this ordinance. Again, all it is giving Patrick more time to do his job and come back with another, he'll come back with another ordinance, whatever that is, and I appreciate it. I really appreciate everybody doing that. Thank you.
You're on mute, Chris.
Unless there's any objection, the next council meeting will be on July 6th in council chambers. No
Yeah, I
objections.
don't know why it took us that long.
No objections, then this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you and good night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks. Happy
Thank-
birthday, Denny.
Thank you, guys.